The story starts with a middle-aged man who was hit by a truck and taken to the hospital. The doctors couldn't save him, and he heard a voice. When he woke up, he realized that a man wanted to kiss him. After that, he was kissed by a pretty woman, and he was surprised to see them. In addition, he didn't understand their language, and he was confused. After that, he tried to touch some boobs, but he realized that he was reborn as a baby. In the months that followed, he learned that his parents' names were Paul and Zenith, who were 20 years old. Meanwhile, as a baby, Rudy still possessed the consciousness of a middle-aged man. Then he learned more about his new home, and he also was a pervert. Rudy managed to learn faster than normal babies, and he often played with his maid Lilia's underwear. As a baby, Rudy always looked at Lilia with a pervert mind face, and she got goosebumps. Then Lilia told Zenith that Rudy does indecent things. Zenith didn't believe her and said that Rudy is still a little baby. A few weeks later, Rudy learned that he was reincarnated into the Middle Ages, and he missed his old computer to watch animes. Then he saw his father Paul practicing swordsmanship and was impressed by his skills. Suddenly Rudy fell on his head and his mother was worried about him. Zenith checked if her baby boy was injured. Afterwards, she said that she will now heal her head with a spell. Rudy was confused and thought that his mother is insane because magic didn't exist in his previous life. Suddenly, Rudy saw magic for the first time and his head was healed. He was shocked and couldn't believe magic existed in his new life. A few years passed, Rudy learned to walk and he could already speak. He tried to learn a lot every day in order to use magic as soon as possible. Then Rudy played in a chest and he found books while playing. Rudy's parents only had 5 books and he realized that he couldn't read the writing of the New World. Then another year passed and he learned secretly how to read. Rudy could already read most of the words and his parents thought that he didn't understand the content at all. Then Rudy tried to use one of the spells. So he tried to cast a water spell. Rudy was able to create a water ball that burst immediately. Later he tried to cast the spell again. As a result, he concentrated and tried to visualize the water ball in his mind. So he tried to use the spell, but he was out of MP. After that, Rudy practiced using magic every day, and he managed to increase his MP more every day. After much research into the use of the spell, he realized that he could also use wordless magic. When he was learning wordless magic, he wondered why spells even existed. Rudy thought it was pointless to recite magic formulas when wordless magic also existed. At night we see Rudy reading the books about magic and he wanted to learn more. The next morning, he practiced the water ball spell. He continued to practice and hoped to gain special power through practice as an adult. In the days that followed, we see Paul training swordsmanship. Suddenly water was poured over Paul, and he wondered where the water came from. The reason for this was Rudy, because he learned how to shoot water balls. He was happy and was able to successfully master the water ball spell. After mastering a beginner spell, he wanted to cast an advanced spell. He then recited the words of the advanced spell and water was collected around him. Rudy was shocked and shot a huge water ball that destroyed his home. His parents immediately ran to Rudy and they were worried. His father was confused, but his mother understood that Rudy had cast a spell. Rudy was afraid of her mother's creepy look and apologized. His mother was delighted with Rudy's talent and wanted to hire a magic teacher for Rudy. Paul refused, because they agreed that if they had a son, they would raise him to be a strong warrior. As a result, the two parents argued about Rudy's future. Suddenly, maid Lilia suggested they should teach Rudy both. In the days that followed, a home tutor was appointed for Rudy to teach him magic. Rudy imagined his new home tutor as an old man, but his new teacher was a teenage girl. Then Roxy found out that Rudy would be her student. She thought that Paul and Zenith were stupid because she should teach magic to a little kid. Zenith heard everything and she explained to Roxy that Rudy is a genius. After that, the basics of magic were explained to Rudy, but he already has the knowledge of the basics. Followed, they wanted to recite the incantation and Rudy found it unnecessary because he could use wordless magic. Roxy then cast the spell Water Ball and she destroyed a tree. Rudy explained to Roxy that his mother will be angry because she had taken care of the tree every day. So Roxy went to the tree and she restored the tree with healing magic. Roxy was praised and she enjoyed the compliments. After that, Rudy wanted to cast the water ball spell too, but he was distracted by Roxy's panties. He missed his water ball spell, and Roxy noticed that Rudy hadn't completed the spell. However, Roxy learned he is able to use wordless magic, and she was shocked. Later, Zenith noticed about her damaged tree, and Roxy was admonished. Roxy was depressed and thought she was going to be fired. As a result, Rudy cheered her up, but he was looking like a pervert because he was an otaku. Somehow, Rudy managed to cheer Roxy up. Suddenly, Rudy's mother showed up, and she wanted to invite Roxy to dinner to get to know her better. In the evening, they ate together, and Roxy was happy about having dinner with Rudy's family. Rudy was also happy for being reborn, and he was looking forward. In the following days, we see Rudy's old life, and he was beaten up by debt collectors because he had no money. He became homeless and didn't know what to do with his life. Then he saw 3 students and a truck almost ran them over. When Rudy tried to save the students in his old life, he woke up from his nightmare. He realized he had fallen asleep because he didn't have MP left. After his nap, he heard his parents moaning and he wanted to go teasing his parents. Suddenly Rudy saw Roxy, who was horny by hearing the moans of his parents. Rudy was surprised, and he didn't want to annoy a growing girl, but he was happy to see Roxy being horny. Then half a year passed since Roxy became his home tutor, and she taught Rudy a lot about magic. In the evening, Rudy was always taught the theory of magic, and he always tried to see Roxy's panties. Roxy knew Rudy was a pervert and she admonished him. Roxy explained to Rudy that she is a demon, and that's why Rudy's parents were surprised on the first day. Rudy learned that 500 years ago a war broke out and the demons called Spelled were the strongest of them. The Spelled race was banished to a demon continent, and many evil rumors existed about them. As a result, Roxy ordered Rudy to stay away from the Spelled demons, who were having green hair and a red emerald on their foreheads. Then Roxy explained that sometimes her hair looks green because of the glare of the light. Suddenly Rudy said to her that Roxy's hair color is beautiful. Rudy thought that he got infinite riz because he played many dating sim games. Later Rudy tried to see Roxy while changing her clothes, but she noticed him immediately. After another 6 months, Rudy learned to master advanced magic perfectly. He also continued to train with his father in swordsmanship. Unfortunately, Rudy was only gifted in magic, and he lacked a talent for swordsmanship. A few days later, Roxy helped the other villagers water the wheat. Rudy watched the other children playing outside, but he was afraid of other people. The reason was, Rudy was always bullied in his old life. Then Roxy saw the depressed Rudy and asked what's going on, but Rudy didn't want to worry her. After that, they looked at the beautiful view of the village. Roxy told him more about the world beyond the mountains of his village. Then Roxy suggested him to find a magic school to become a great mage. Rudy didn't want to show his fears and said he is satisfied with the teaching skills of Roxy. She became very sad, because she knew Rudy would one day surpass her in talent. Then she went into the house and thought about her magical powers. After that, another year passed, and Rudy was 5 years old. The women prepared a feast together for Rudy's birthday party. In the evening, they celebrated Rudy's birthday together, and he was happy about the nice time with his family. Finally, Paul gave his son a sword. He was aware that Rudy is still too young for a real sword, but Paul wished that Rudy become a strong and nice warrior. Next, Rudy received a magical grimoire from his mother, and he was delighted with her gift. Finally, Roxy gave him a wand to increase his magic power. He thanked Roxy, and was happy about his new wand. Suddenly Roxy got sad, because Rudy had his final exam the next day. Rudy was afraid to go outside of his home. Then he remembered his old life. He was always bullied, and always wished for superpowers as an otaku. Besides, he was afraid to go outside, and the other students didn't stop of bullying him. Unfortunately, he hid in his room until he was a middle-aged man. The next day, Rudy had his last day with Roxy, and he didn't want to go out to do his final exam. Then his father wanted to lift him up to the horse, but he hid behind his mother. Roxy thought Rudy was afraid of horses and she rode with him together. Rudy was afraid to leave his home because of the bad memories. When Rudy left his home for the first time, he was nervous. Then he realized that they weren't all staring at him, they all were staring at Roxy. The reason was all of the villagers knew Roxy and they all greeted her politely. As a result, Rudy was able to overcome his fear to go outside, and he got to know the beautiful nature. After that, Rudy's last final exam started, and Roxy wanted to use a sacred level water magic. She was only able to cast the spell once, and Rudy should learn to use it too. Then Roxy started reciting the spell, and she caused a strong thunderstorm. Suddenly it started to rain, and the thunderstorm got stronger. As Roxy concentrated the magic, their horse Caravaggio was struck by lightning. Roxy immediately stopped the spell, and she instantly healed Caravaggio. Roxy apologized and she wanted to see Rudy use the spell. Then Rudy took out his wand and Roxy protected Caravaggio. So Rudy started to cast the strong water magic, and he also created a storm cloud. While casting the spell, Rudy was sad, because he had to say goodbye to Roxy after the final test. followed, he wanted to show Roxy how much he learned, and he was able to cast the spell successfully. Later on, Roxy praised him for conjuring up an even more powerful spell than herself. After that, Roxy congratulated her student, and he was appointed to a sacred level water mage. In the evening, Paul and Zenith wanted Roxy to stay with them, but Roxy turned down the offer. She wanted to learn more about magic, and Rudy's parents accepted her decision. Then Roxy said goodbye to Rudy, and he received a necklace as a present. She said the pendant is a lucky charm. Roxy then said goodbye to Rudy's family, and they were all sad. Rudy ran after her and thanked her for teaching him so much. A few days later, Lilia discovered that Rudy had stolen a pair of panties from Roxy,